Fitzwilliam Darcy, my lineage, my duty, and my heart. When Charles Bingley told me, with his usual cheerful ease, that he meant to take a house in Hertfordshire, I received the news with my customary calm. Charles and I have differed since youth. He is light-hearted, trusting, quick to see the best in everyone. I am trained to observe, to weigh, and therefore I am quicker to notice defects. "The country will do me good, Darcy," he said. "There I shall be nearer to plain dealing and sincerity." I allowed myself a slight smile. Simplicity is not the same as sincerity. Credulity too often walks beside them. Yet Charles is one of those rare people Providence protects even from the consequences of his own kindness. I went with him, not for love of country balls, but for friendship, which sometimes asks for as much steadiness as duty. I went, with no expectations, for friendship. Netherfield proved a pleasant place, trim avenues, water, a house where a careful master, if not the present, then the former, had left his hand upon things. The neighbourhood met us with all the candour of the country. New faces are judged before the carriage has taken the last turn. The parish clergyman works harder than is wanted. Young ladies dream, mothers calculate, and gentlemen parade harmless vanities. Charles brightened from the first week, and I confess, I took pleasure in his pleasure. His joy lit whatever it touched, simple and unstudied, and I liked the clear shine of it. On some mornings, when mist lay low over the meadow and the lake looked like dark glass, I walked out alone. The country's silence is not the town's. There, walls smother the noise. Here, space absorbs it. Thoughts move more slowly, but they travel farther. I did not yet know that in this place I should first begin to speak plainly with myself. The Meryton Assembly did not promise refinement, yet there, among candles and the hum of easy compliments, the story began that changed my life. I was received with that attention which inevitably accompanies name and fortune. Attention is polite, but it seldom relieves a man accustomed to the quiet of his own reflections. Charles danced without rest, and had already distinguished a young lady whose gentleness and clear regard caught him at the first bow. Later, I learnt her name, Miss Jane Bennet. I watched her sister, the one whose laughter sounded soft yet distinct, whose lifted eyes spoke of a mind as quick as it was witty, a light flush, an easy grace, no studied coquetry. These drew notice before I admitted it to myself. I had no wish to dance, and when I was pressed to make up a set, I uttered words I would gladly erase from memory. She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. I said it mostly to be rid of importunity, not from conviction. But the phrase travelled farther than I allowed for, and struck deeper than it should. She heard. The corner of her mouth moved, not in hurt, but in contained amusement. Behind that calm amusement I felt a dignity keenly alive to any slight. Dignity does not care to be measured aloud. That very evening I repented, not aloud, to myself. The Bennet family presented a collection of characters that showed plainly how a country neighbourhood more often throws up extremes than guards a sense of measure. Mrs. Bennet, good intentions multiplied by anxiety and a noisy bustle. Mr. Bennet, an intelligent man, tired of clamour, hiding in irony. The daughters, ranging from thoughtful seriousness to a girlish heedlessness, which at 15 may be charming, and at 16 begins to alarm. I did not condemn. Families are like English weather, seldom settled. But I saw what others overlooked, the composure of the one whose laughter had pricked me. Later, I grew used to calling her by name, Elizabeth. I should have left matters at first impressions, had it not been for friendship. Charles was captivated. His open nature saw only what was good, and his trusting temper asked for a counterweight. I had long been that for him. I watched, how Jane listened, how she answered, how she coloured slightly at the mere mention of his name, and I found not one sign that could make me doubt the sincerity of her feeling. Yet the Miss Bingleys, far from benevolent, whispered doubts, and my own caution encouraged the conclusion that Jane's return of affection was quieter than the rustle of leaves. I was mistaken, but did not know it then. It was not the first time I overrated my own observation. Common sense and a cool habit of inference are easily mistaken for discernment. Where one should have waited and listened, I drew a conclusion. It proved premature. Meanwhile, Mr. Wickham appeared in the neighbourhood. His manners were beyond reproach, his talk easy, his smile ready for any who required it. I knew him of old, and alas, I knew what others did not. Behind smooth manners he hid more debts than truth. I chose to be silent. A sense of dignity does not argue in a coarse fashion, but silence is convenient soil for rumour. He told his version of our past, and with bitterness I watched how eagerly it was believed. In her eyes, in Elizabeth's eyes, I read a cool certainty. I was in the wrong, he the injured. I was angry not with her, but with the ease with which falsehood can imitate truth, and with myself for leaving the stage to him. Mr. Collins, the Bennet's cousin, arrived as a reminder that propriety may be driven into caricature, his bows to rank, his speech woven almost entirely of compliments, sweet as over-sugared tea, produced in me a curious mix of aversion and pity. That man then began to show attentions to Elizabeth, so clumsily that I found my hand close inside my glove. Would he dare? Would she accept? The fear was simple. Duty might push a sensible woman to a place where her heart could not live. Happily, her refusal was clear. Charlotte Lucas's choice, however, reminded me that not everyone owns the luxury of waiting for love. I do not presume to judge. Circumstances force women to choose from what fortune offers, not from what the heart would wish. But that evening I knew this much. Elizabeth would not accept an easy life without respect. That choice, not made for my sake, answered in me with respect for her. I cannot tell when the hidden flame became light to me. Perhaps in a conversation where she laughed at my stiff principles, and I laughed at myself for the first time. Perhaps on a walk when the autumn wind whipped the fields, and her look was clearer than the sky. Perhaps in the way she listened to her sister, with no impatience, no condescension, only warmth. I understood before she did. Caution was giving way to attachment, pride was yielding to admiration. Yet reason also spoke in me, used to putting ought before wish. Fortune, family, the world's opinion, inequality of connections, these arguments I arranged in my head like an accountant his ledger. The heart, it seems, keeps its own books. It either owns a person, or it does not. I wished to draw nearer, and I chose the road of pretexts. I visited my aunt, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, at Rosings. Mr. Collins and his new bride were there, and with them she. I'm not a young man. To confess I was glad of a chance meeting like a boy was not easy. Lady Catherine poured out instruction with her accustomed assurance. Mr. Collins spread an endless carpet of compliments before her, and I watched Elizabeth enter the room with that light half-laugh that sobers without belittling. A struggle was inevitable. Duty and love seldom sit at the same table unless they agree the portions beforehand. I hesitated but little, not because love leapt suddenly stronger, but because my arguments against it emptied themselves at the moment I saw clearly that without her my life would be correct and barren. Conclusions ended. Action began. I came to her, not in a ballroom, not before an audience, but as a man resolved to speak plainly, and I spoke, awkwardly, proudly, mixing confession with superiority. I love you, against my reason, against my circumstances. Love sounds poor when it says against more than it says for. I spoke badly. She answered honestly. Her answer was honest, and therefore painful. She thrust away not only my words, but what I had long taken for merit, assurance, a habit of seeing farther than others, a presumed right to judge. She flung at me, rightly or not, but sincerely,
my guilt towards Jane, my injustice to Wickham, my contempt for her relations. I left with that rare sensation when one argues with oneself and, for the first time, obeys.
I wrote the letter at dawn. Words had always come readily. That night each seemed to demand a price. I wrote slowly, almost scratching the page, about Georgiana, my sister, about how Wickham had tried to destroy her youth, about Bingley, and why I had held him back from a connection that seemed to me unequal in openness of feeling. I did not excuse, I explained. If ever indulgence may be merited, it is by clarity of fact. I knew she might not believe me, but conscience required that, if she chose disbelief, she should do it with every fact before her. After that, more quiet, more looking, less judging. There are mornings that change the angle of light. After the letter I understood for the first time. Love will not tolerate pride, as a candle will not endure a draught. I considered my manner, how my silence feeds other men's slander, how my cold reserve wounds those I never meant to wound. It was the beginning of a labour a man undertakes within himself without witnesses. I did not expect her at Pemberley. I seldom expect. Expectancy is a soft dependence, and dependence is a poor counsellor. Yet, seeing her on the path, I felt neither shame nor panic, but a curious relief. Fate had not finished speaking. Relief, strange, but clear. She entered, and the house, dear to me because it speaks of lineage and duty, became dear because it might please her. Mock it if you wish. It mattered to me what she would think. A man in love rejoices less in his own magnitude than in the hope that what is worthy in him will be seen by her. I tried to speak differently, fewer judgments, more attention, fewer I know, more allow me to learn. Georgiana was shy at first meeting, but quickly warmed to Elizabeth with that quiet favour which in my sister always foretells friendship. My sister's friendships begin in silence. Elizabeth heard it. That mattered, more than any stranger would suppose. A household's peace is not built on one feeling. It needs harmonies. In Pemberley's gardens we spoke of simple things, music, weather, how the hills alter with the light. The simpler the words, the clearer I felt it. The changes in me were not for show. Hope had only just learned to breathe, and immediately coughed with scandal. News came of Lydia's flight. 2 roads lay before me, to withdraw, as a stranger should, or to do what love demands, not kinship. I chose the latter. Pride protested, to deal again with Wickham, the man who had nearly ruined my sister. But love teaches a courage no elegant gesture can replace. Through mutual acquaintances I found them, paid the debts, secured the marriage, not for thanks, not to add a line to any account of merit, but so that her tears, Elizabeth's tears, might be lighter, and her family spared final disgrace. If not for her, I should never have stepped into that dirty business. If not for her sister, and for Charles's happiness with Jane, I should not have extended my hand to a man whose handshake I detest. But love teaches what is principal and what's secondary. Duty teaches a man to tell pride from honour. I corrected too what I had once counted my right, to restrain Charles. In London I saw how, no wearer of his heart upon his sleeve, yet no actor either, he was losing his liveliness, how his smile had become an obligation rather than a habit. I told him the truth. I had erred in judging Miss Bennet's reserve. We returned, and when, agitated, he searched for the words of his proposal, I felt a quiet gratitude to the world. I was granted to witness a friend's happiness, and to know that my influence was no longer a stone in his path. I removed from his road the stone I had myself placed there. I did not at once hear of Lady Catherine's visit to the Bennets. When the rumours reached me, they came not as alarm, but as a sign. If my aunt went in person, then some line had been crossed. She had been refused. Where she raises her voice, a firm no has usually already been spoken. I permitted myself a hope, quiet, but steady. We met again, and I spoke as I should have spoken at first, with no despite, no appeals to difference, no proud reservations. I asked for her hand as a man asks who has walked through his own darkness. When she answered, not with a shout of yes, but with a clear, calm consent, I heard music in it, gentle and sure. The world might whisper, debate, stare. I had no time for it. Happiness concerns itself with being, not with being observed. Looking back now along the chain of events, I see in them an order I had not noticed before. I had thought myself the architect of my fortune. In truth, I was a pupil. I have learnt to see in people not only what they owe the world, but what the world owes them. A right to respect, though their manners be imperfect. A right to affection, though their fortune be small. A right to err, if the error is followed by the courage of confession. I think often of the Bennets, Mr. Bennet, tired of noise yet able to laugh at himself, Mrs. Bennet, anxious yet sincerely loving, Mary, whose seriousness, I hope, will ripen into wisdom, Kitty, whose thoughtlessness will, I trust, give way to kindness, Lydia, may life school her more gently, and of Jane, now Mrs. Bingley, whose mildness proved stronger than other people's doubts, but most of all, of her, of how her laughter softens any bitterness, how her mind refuses the comfort of half-truths, how her pride does not abase but elevates. I loved her before I knew it, I respected her before I admitted it, and if our age is harsh on those who set feeling above calculation, let there be at least one house in Derbyshire where calculation serves feeling, not rules it. People say love changes us. It does, partly. Love more truly uncovers what was hidden, the ability to be gentler without losing dignity, to be bolder without losing sense. Elizabeth and I are different, and thank heaven for it. Her clarity keeps me from obstinacy. My constancy spares her needless fears. I still am no friend to balls, and she still laughs at my reserve. But there is no mockery in her laughter now, no cold in my reserve. There is accord, not a bargain, not a concession, but the even breath of two characters finding a shared home. If, at some future ball, I should hear another man's tolerable, the very word that once escaped my own lips, I shall not turn to argue. I shall simply find Elizabeth's gaze and remember that I recalled my word for good. Let the room repeat its old lines. I shall not.